The aroma of slow-cooked steak filled the air as I set the last candle on our dinner table. The soft glow of the flames flickered against the dimly lit room, casting a warm, intimate ambience. Tonight was supposed to be special, our 5th wedding anniversary. I had planned it down to the last detail. A homemade dinner, a playlist of songs from our honeymoon, and a bottle of the same wine we drank the night I proposed. I checked my phone, waiting for a text from Lena, my wife. She was late. Again. But tonight, I was willing to overlook it. Maybe she was just wrapping up at work. Then my phone buzzed. "Hey babe, I totally forgot to tell you. Mike is throwing a barbecue tonight. Everyone's coming. You should come too. Love you, Red Heart." I stared at the screen. Mike. My brother. I exhaled sharply, my fingers tightening around my phone. Our wedding anniversary, and she had forgotten? Worse, she had chosen to go to my brother's barbecue instead? I took a deep breath. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. Maybe she had just gotten caught up in excitement. I called her. She answered on the second ring, her voice too cheerful. "Hey baby, you coming? You do remember what today is, right?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. A pause, then a forced laugh. "Of course. But Mike's barbecue is huge. Everyone's here. Your cousins, my friends, even your boss. You should come, babe. It's gonna be fun." "Lena," I said, my tone low, "it's our anniversary." Another pause. "I know," she finally said, sounding annoyed now, "but we can celebrate another day. It's just one barbecue. You should be here, instead of sulking at home." Sulking? I clenched my jaw, staring at the romantic dinner table I had spent hours preparing. The candles, the music, the wine. All meaningless now. "I'll think about it," I said coldly and hung up. My heart pounded against my ribs. How had we come to this? Just a year ago, Lena would have never missed our anniversary. She would have been excited, not treating it like an afterthought. I had a choice. I could stay here, wallowing in my own disappointment, or I could go. Not for the party, not for the barbecue, but for answers. I grabbed my keys and left. The moment I arrived at Mike's house, I could hear the music blaring from the backyard. Laughter and the scent of grilled meat filled the air. It was a full-on party, not some casual get-together. I made my way through the crowd, looking for Lena, and then I saw her. She was standing near the grill, laughing with Mike. Her hand on his arm, her smile too wide, her laughter too easy. I frowned. She hadn't even texted me back since our call. I walked over. "Hey, there he is." Mike grinned, flipping a steak. "Didn't think you were coming, bro." "I almost didn't," I said, my eyes locked on Lena. She turned to me, still holding a red plastic cup. "Oh my God, babe, you came. See? It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, guess I was overthinking things." Mike patted my back. "Damn right you were. Here, have a beer." I took it, but my mind wasn't on drinking. I was watching Lena. She seemed too comfortable here, too at home. I noticed the way Mike leaned toward her when he talked, the way her hand lingered just a second too long when she touched his wrist. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Something wasn't right. And then, I saw it. Lena leaned in close to Mike, whispering something in his ear. He smirked and nodded. Then, they both turned and started walking toward the house. I followed. They didn't notice me. I watched as they slipped past the kitchen, down the hallway, and then into the backyard shed. My heart pounded. Why the hell were they going in there together? Something cold slithered down my spine. I clenched my fists. And then, without thinking, I moved. Toward the shed. Toward the truth. Toward something I wasn't sure I was ready to see. I stood frozen, staring at the closed shed door. My mind raced, my pulse hammering in my ears. What the hell were they doing in there? Mike had a whole damn house. If Lena wanted to grab something, why would she need to follow him alone into the shed? I took a slow breath, my hands clenching into fists. I needed proof. Not assumptions. Not paranoia. Proof. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and slipped closer. There was a small gap in the wooden planks near the door, just enough to see inside. My stomach twisted. Lena was leaning against the workbench, her arms crossed over her chest, smiling up at Mike like they were sharing a private joke. Mike, on the other hand, stood too close. His body language was intimate, his hands resting on either side of her, trapping her against the workbench. I held my breath, and then I heard her giggle. "You're such a bad influence," Lena whispered, tilting her head. Mike smirked. "You love it." I squeezed my phone so hard my knuckles went white. "He's here, you know," Lena added in a hushed voice. Mike chuckled. "Yeah, I saw him. He looks miserable." Lena laughed softly, the sound stabbing into my chest like a blade. "He's always so serious," she murmured. "I feel like I can't even have fun anymore without him getting all weird about it." Mike ran a hand over his jaw, pretending to think. "So, if I asked you to have a little more fun, would that be weird?" Lena bit her lip. That was all I needed to see. I turned around and walked away, my entire body numb. I reached the front of the house, my mind spinning. I needed to stay calm. Blowing up right now wouldn't help. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think logically. Lena had made her choice. She wasn't some unsuspecting victim being seduced. She was fully engaged in this. And my own brother? Mike had always been a little jealous of me, ever since we were kids. I got the better grades, the better job, the better house. Maybe he wanted to take this from me too. Well, if that's what he thought, he was dead wrong. I wasn't going to be some pathetic husband begging for an explanation. No, I was going to bury them both in the consequences of their actions. I pulled out my phone and played back the recording. Their voices were clear, undeniable. I saved the file and uploaded it to my cloud drive. Step 1. Complete. I needed more. I turned back toward the shed, stepping around to the side where there was a dusty old window. Wiping a streak through the grime, I peered inside. And what I saw made my stomach flip. Mike's hands were on her hips. He whispered something in her ear, and Lena laughed softly. Her hands moved up his chest. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. They were touching each other. My brother. My wife. The rage I felt at that moment was unlike anything I had ever known. But I didn't move. I didn't storm in like some out-of-control fool. I was done being predictable. Instead, I pulled my phone up and hit record on the video camera. I zoomed in, steadying my hand, capturing every touch, every whisper, every smirk. This wasn't just cheating. This was deliberate betrayal. I walked back to my car, shoving my phone into my pocket. The video had captured everything, proof that neither of them could deny. My mind was already forming a plan. This wouldn't end tonight. No, I wanted Lena and Mike to suffer. I wanted them to feel the fire they had set inside me. And when I was done, they wouldn't even have ashes left. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat like a drum signaling the war I was about to unleash. I had them. The video on my phone was undeniable proof. The soft whispers, the lingering touches, the way my own brother's hands roamed my wife's body like he had a right to them. I had two choices. I could barge in right now, rip that shed door off its hinges, and watch their faces twist in horror as they realized they were caught. I could throw punches, scream, demand an explanation, or I could be smart about this. I could burn them down in a way that neither of them would see coming. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. Rage was a powerful thing, but only if you controlled it. If you let it control you, you became reckless. And I wasn't going to let them make a fool out of me. No, they were the ones who would be left in ruins. I started my car but didn't drive away. Not yet. Instead, I sat there, watching. 5 minutes passed, then 10, and finally, the shed door creaked open. Mike stepped out first, glancing around like a damn criminal checking for witnesses. Lena followed right behind him, her dress slightly wrinkled, her lipstick a little smudged. They shared a look that made my stomach churn with disgust. Mike grinned, said something to her, and then walked off toward the backyard, blending into the crowd. Lena? She pulled out her phone. I wasn't surprised when, a second later, my own phone vibrated in my pocket. I let it ring twice before picking up, making sure my voice was steady. "Hey babe," she said, sounding way too normal. I glanced up through my windshield. She was walking back toward the house, fixing her hair as if she hadn't just been grinding on my brother a few minutes ago. "Hey," I replied, keeping my voice casual. "You having fun?" She giggled. "Yeah. Where did you go?" "You just got here. I ran into an old friend," I lied smoothly. "Thought I'd grab a drink and catch up." She sighed dramatically. "Well, hurry up and come find me. We should at least dance together before the night ends." My grip on the steering wheel tightened. She had just cheated on me, and now she wanted to dance like nothing had happened? I forced a chuckle. "I'll be there soon." "Good," she chirped. "Love you." I smiled at the phone. "Love you too." Then I ended the call and threw my phone onto the passenger seat. This woman really thought she could play me. She had no idea that her world was about to collapse. I didn't go back to the party. Instead, I spent the next few hours preparing. Step 1. Gather more evidence. I uploaded everything, the video, the audio recording, even screenshots of our call logs, to a secure drive. If Lena tried to deny it later, I'd bury her with proof. Step 2. Call in reinforcements. I reached out to a private investigator I knew from work. Told him I needed a full background check on Mike and Lena. If there was any dirt on them, I'd find it. Step 3. Play the perfect husband. The key to destroying them wasn't to explode in rage. It was to let them think I didn't know. To let them feel safe. To let them get comfortable. Right before I took everything from them. I got home around midnight. Lena was already in bed, scrolling through her phone like a woman with zero guilt. "Hey babe," she said sleepily. "I missed you at the party." I sat on the edge of the bed, studying her. She looked so damn innocent. I reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yeah," I said softly. "I missed you too." Her smile widened, and she leaned up, pressing a slow, teasing kiss to my lips. I kissed her back, but in my head, I was already planning her funeral. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning like a machine fueled by rage. Lena was asleep beside me, curled up peacefully, breathing steadily, like a woman with no guilt, no remorse. Her body was still warm from where she had pressed against mine earlier, trying to seduce me, trying to distract me. But I wasn't the same man anymore. She thought she had gotten away with it. She thought I was still the blind, devoted husband who would never suspect a thing. She had no idea that every moment she spent lying to me was another step toward her downfall. I turned my head slightly, watching her in the dim light. How long had she been doing this? Had I been a fool for months? Years? The betrayal clawed at my insides, but I didn't let it consume me. I had a plan now, and I wasn't going to rush it. No, I was going to make it last. I was going to make sure that when I finally lit the match, it would burn everything to the ground. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed Lena goodbye before she left for work, sent her texts throughout the day, and even told her I was planning a surprise weekend getaway for us. She ate it up. Meanwhile, I was setting the trap. I met with my private investigator. "Got anything on them?" I asked, sliding into the leather seat of the downtown cafe we had chosen as our neutral meeting spot. Carlos, a former FBI analyst, nodded as he pulled a thick folder from his bag. "Oh, I've got plenty," he said, flipping it open. The first photo hit me like a bullet to the chest. Lena, at a hotel. Not just any hotel, the same one she and I used to sneak away to when we were first dating. With Mike. The timestamp was 3 weeks ago. My jaw tensed, but I stayed calm. I flipped to the next page. More photos. Different locations. Different times. Same story. They weren't just some drunken mistake in a shed. This was a full-blown affair. "Your wife," Carlos said, "is a pro at covering her tracks. She doesn't text Mike directly. She uses burner apps. They meet on weekdays during lunch breaks. And get this," he tapped one of the photos. "She's been using your money." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Carlos slid a bank statement across the table. "She books the hotels using your credit card," he said, "but disguises the transactions under spa services and business expenses. She's basically using your own hard-earned money to cheat on you." I laughed. Carlos raised an eyebrow. "I take it that's not because you find this funny?" "Oh, it's hilarious," I said, still staring at the evidence. "Because she thinks she's winning. But she doesn't realize." I tapped the folder. This is the beginning of her end. That evening, I came home early. Lena was in the shower, singing. I took her phone from the nightstand, calmly unlocked it, and installed tracking software. Everything she did from this point on would be monitored. Every text, every call, every location. I slipped the phone back just as the bathroom door opened. She stepped out in just a towel, her damp hair clinging to her skin. "Oh," she purred, fake surprise in her voice. "You're home early." I smiled. "Wanted to surprise you." She smirked, stepping closer. "Well, what are you going to do now that you have me all to yourself?" I looked into her lying eyes, and I kissed her. Because the best revenge is making them believe you're still a fool. 3 nights later, I invited Mike and Lena to dinner at our house. It was the perfect setup. A meal, a toast, some laughter, and then the fire. The moment where I would rip their perfect little world apart. Lena had no clue what was coming. Mike? He was just as oblivious. They walked into my house, laughing together. Too comfortable, too confident. I poured them drinks, smiling, playing the perfect host. I raised my glass. "To family," I said, forcing the words out. They clinked their glasses against mine. "To family," they echoed. I smiled, and in my head, I thought, "You have no idea what's coming." I watched them drink. Mike took a big gulp, setting his glass down with an easy grin, completely oblivious. Lena, on the other hand, sipped slowly, her fingers wrapped delicately around the stem of the wine glass. The same glass I had bought for our wedding anniversary last year. Oh, the irony. "Man, this steak is perfect," Mike said, cutting into his plate. "I almost feel bad that I didn't invite you to the barbecue first. Should have known you'd have the better food." I smiled at him, taking a sip of my own drink. "Yeah," I said, "shame I missed it. Must have been one hell of a night." Lena let out a small, nervous laugh. "Oh, come on, babe. It was just a party. We were all drinking, having fun. You know, you really should have stayed." I turned to her. She had no idea that I had seen everything, that I had heard everything, that I had recorded everything. And now, I was about to drop the bomb. I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm. "You're right, Lena. I should have stayed." She blinked. "What?" Mike looked up from his plate, chewing, completely unaware that his life was about to collapse in front of him. "You know," I continued, "because then I could have caught the part where my wife snuck off into a shed with my brother." Dead silence. Mike stopped chewing. His fork hung midair. Lena's wine glass shook in her hand. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and hit play. Their voices filled the room. "He's always so serious. I feel like I can't even have fun anymore without him getting all weird about it. So, if I asked you to have a little more fun, would that be weird?" And then her giggle. Mike turned pale. Lena's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide in pure horror. I let the recording play for a few more seconds before I slammed the phone onto the table, making the plates jump. The air was thick. Lena stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Baby, Shut up." She flinched. I turned my gaze to Mike. "You too," I said. "Shut your damn mouth." His jaw clenched, his face flushing with guilt, with shame. But he didn't deny it. He couldn't. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, feeling the weight of their betrayal pressing down on me. "You know," I said, shaking my head, "if this had been any other guy, maybe I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have let you walk away with just a divorce." I turned to Mike. "But you? My own blood?" Mike swallowed hard. I reached into my other pocket and tossed a stack of papers onto the table. Lena stared at them, confused, before hesitantly picking them up. Her eyes flickered across the page, her face draining of color as she realized what she was looking at. "Divorce papers. Already signed," I said. "By me. I filed them this morning." Her breathing turned shaky. "Babe, please." "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't babe me." I leaned closer, lowering my voice, making sure they felt every word. "You're done, Lena. We're done. And you?" I turned to Mike, watching the way his fingers twitched on the table. "You're about to lose everything." Mike blinked. "What do you mean?" I smirked. See, while I was gathering all this evidence, I thought, why stop at just the affair? Why not dig a little deeper? I reached into my jacket and pulled out another folder. I tossed it in front of him. Open it, I said. Mike hesitated, then slowly flipped it open. The second he saw what was inside, his face contorted in pure panic. How the hell did you get this? He whispered. Lena looked between us, confused. What is that? I smiled coldly. Mike's financial records. Mike's breath hitched. I tilted my head. Oh, you didn't tell her? Lena snatched the folder from his hands and began scanning the pages. And then, her face twisted in shock. Mike, what the hell is this? Mike said nothing. Lena looked at me. Embezzlement, I said simply. Turns out my dear brother here has been stealing from his own company. Small amounts, over time. Just enough to stay under the radar. But guess what? I pointed to one particular document. I had a forensic accountant track everything. And now? I took out my phone again. Now I have proof. Mike shot up from his chair, his face a mask of pure panic. You son of a... I slammed my fist on the table, making the dishes rattle. Sit down. He froze. And for the first time in his life, Mike looked afraid of me. You thought you could take everything from me? I said, my voice quiet, but dangerous. You thought you could take my wife? Ruin my marriage? I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. Well, now you're gonna lose everything. His breath was heavy. He looked at Lena, desperate, but she was still flipping through the documents, her hands trembling. And then, the final nail in the coffin. I pulled out one last paper, a printed out email. I slid it across the table toward Lena. Read it, I said. She hesitated, then slowly picked it up. As she read, her expression crumbled. Tears filled her eyes. And then she looked at Mike with pure hatred. You bastard, she whispered. Mike's eyes darted back and forth. Lena, wait, Lena threw the paper at him, pushing back from the table. I smirked. Looks like she just found out about your other mistress. Lena gasped. You're seeing someone else? Mike opened his mouth, but I cut him off. Not just someone else, I said, standing up. Multiple women. And guess what? I turned to Lena, giving her a mocking smile. He's been using your money too. Lena let out a choked sob. You piece of... Mike stood abruptly, but I was already walking away. I grabbed my jacket, tossing one last glance over my shoulder. Oh, I said casually, one more thing. I pulled out my phone and pressed send. Mike's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, confused, until he saw the email. His face collapsed. And then, his entire world caught fire. Because I had just sent every piece of evidence to his boss, his investors, and the local authorities. I watched his soul leave his body. And then I walked out the door, never looking back. As I stepped out of the house, the night air felt crisper, almost refreshing. Like the moment right after a storm when the sky clears, and you finally breathe again. Behind me? Chaos. I could still hear Lena's voice rising, her words frantic and raw. You disgusting bastard. You used me. You used my money? Then came Mike's panicked shouts, trying to calm her down, trying to justify the indefensible. Good. Let them destroy each other. I had set the fire. Now, I was going to watch it burn. I slid into my car, gripping the steering wheel, but I didn't start the engine right away. Instead, I pulled up my phone and opened the email thread. The one I had just sent to, heavy checkmark Mike CEO, heavy checkmark his investors, heavy checkmark the local authorities. It contained everything. Financial reports proving his embezzlement, detailed breakdowns of missing company funds, hotel transactions under Lena's name, showing how he used my wife to launder his stolen money. I hadn't just exposed an affair. I had ruined his entire career. No way in hell was he walking away from this unscathed. I tapped the screen, refreshing my inbox. And there it was. The first response from his CEO. Is this real? I smirked. Oh, buddy. It's real. I hit reply and simply sent back. Check the attached files. And the security footage from the executive suite at the Grand Royale Hotel. Because yes, I had dug up those too. Footage of Mike bringing in another woman, not Lena, but one of his mistresses, into the company-paid hotel suite. Corporate fraud and adultery, all wrapped in a neat little bow. He was finished. Just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed again. Lena. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Then, I hit decline. 2 seconds later, another call. I sighed, rubbing my temple, then picked up. What do you want? I asked, my voice cold. Please, Mark, she sobbed. Come back inside. Let's talk about this. I made a mistake. I laughed. A genuine, bitter laugh. Yeah, Lena, I said. You did. She let out a shaky breath, as if trying to hold herself together. I love you. I do. It was just, Mike manipulated me. Mike didn't force you into that shed, Lena, I said. He didn't make you laugh while you betrayed me. That was all you. Silence. Then, quietly, can we fix this? I exhaled, feeling nothing for her anymore. Not in this lifetime. I hung up, and I didn't answer when she called again. I spent the night at a hotel, just a few miles away. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of notifications. I smirked as I opened my email. Mike had officially been fired. Apparently, his boss had gone ballistic, forwarding my evidence to their legal team. There were whispers that law enforcement was already involved, as millions were missing from company funds. It was only a matter of time before they arrested him. Curious, I pulled up social media. Mike's company had already wiped his name from their website. His LinkedIn? Deleted. And on his personal Facebook? His wife had publicly announced their divorce. Apparently, she had found out everything. About Lena, about the money, about all his affairs. And she had taken their kids and left him for good. Mike had lost everything overnight. And the best part? I hadn't even needed to lift a finger. He had done it all to himself. By noon, I was sitting in a coffee shop, enjoying my first peaceful meal in weeks, when my phone buzzed. Lena again. I rolled my eyes but answered. Mark, she breathed. Can we meet? Why? I need to explain. Please. I sighed, swirling my coffee. Fine, but not at the house. Meet me at the park. She agreed, but I wasn't meeting her to reconcile. I was meeting her to bury her for good. When I arrived at the park, Lena was already there, sitting on a bench, eyes red and swollen from crying. I took my time walking toward her. Thanks for coming, she said softly. I didn't answer. She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. She started, but then stopped. She swallowed hard. I don't even know where to begin. I'm sorry, I said, crossing my arms. Tears welled up in her eyes. I am sorry, Mark. I swear to God, I am. I never meant to hurt you like this. It just happened. I laughed under my breath. It just happened? Like you tripped and fell into my brother's arms? She winced. I didn't love him, she whispered. I still love you. I let out a slow breath, then pulled something from my pocket. Her wedding ring. I tossed it onto the bench beside her. You don't get to say you love me, I said. Not after this. She sobbed, covering her face. I don't have anyone, Mark, she choked out. Mike he's ruined. I have nothing left. I tilted my head, watching her carefully. That's not my problem, I said simply. Then, I turned around and walked away. For the last time. As I got into my car, I let out a slow breath. It was over. I had one. Lena was alone. Mike was destroyed. And me? For the first time in years, I felt free. And as I drove away, the only thought in my mind was, where do I start my new life? I drove away from the park, the weight of everything finally lifting off my shoulders. Lena was broken. Mike was ruined. But was it enough? I gripped the steering wheel, my jaw tightening. No, they hadn't suffered nearly enough. They needed to feel what I felt. The helplessness, the rage, the despair of knowing your life is over and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So, before I left this town for good, I had one last play to make. That night, I logged into our joint bank account, or at least, what used to be ours. Lena thought she was smart, thought she had been hiding expenses, covering her tracks. Too bad I had already transferred every last cent out of our savings before she even knew she was caught. She still had her separate account, of course, but she wouldn't for long. Because I had called her bank that morning pretending to be her, saying I had lost my card and needed to cancel it immediately. Since we were legally still married, I had enough information to lock her out of her own money. Let's see how she liked being broke. I left $1 in her account. Just one. Because I wanted her to see it, to realize everything was gone when she checked. When she tried to withdraw money for gas. When she tried to buy food. And when she finally tried to call me to scream, to cry, to beg. She'd realized that her number was blocked. Lena was officially cut off from my life. And from the comfortable, easy existence she thought she was entitled to. The next day, I got a call from Carlos, my private investigator. "You're not gonna believe this," he said, laughing darkly. "Try me." "Your brother? He's trying to run." I raised an eyebrow. "Where?" "Booked a one-way ticket to Mexico this morning." I chuckled. "Coward." "He hasn't left yet," Carlos continued, "probably trying to liquidate whatever cash he has left before the IRS freezes his accounts." That's when it hit me. I still had one more knife to twist. Mike was desperate. I could see it all over his face when I spotted him outside a rundown motel later that evening, pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, phone clutched in his hand, probably begging someone for help. I watched from a distance, unseen, as he frantically checked his watch. He had 2 suitcases with him, most likely everything he had left in the world. He thought he could slip away quietly, thought he could escape the consequences. Too bad for him. I had already tipped off the police, and just as I expected, they arrived minutes later. The second Mike saw the squad cars pulling up, his whole body tensed. I almost laughed when he tried to run. Dumbass. 2 officers tackled him to the ground within seconds, wrenching his arms behind his back as he thrashed and screamed. "I didn't do anything," he shouted. "I was set up. This is a mistake." A mistake? He thought this was a mistake? I casually strolled closer, just enough to catch his wild, desperate eyes when he looked up and realized I was watching. And in that moment, he knew. He knew this was me. I smirked, tipping an imaginary hat. His rage exploded. "You son of a bitch," he roared, struggling against the cuffs. "You think this is over? You think?" The officers slammed him into the hood of their car, cutting off his screams. "Shut up," one of them snapped. Mike kept fighting, kept yelling, but it was useless. They stuffed him into the back seat, his face pressed against the window like a trapped animal. I walked past the squad car, just slow enough for him to see my grin. And then I mouthed 2 simple words. "It's over." The car door slammed shut. And just like that, my brother was gone. I drove to my old house one last time, rolling to a slow stop at the curb. The place was dark. Lena wasn't home. She was probably still trying to figure out where all her money went, still trying to call people who would never answer. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. Instead, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found her name. And with one final tap, I deleted her number forever. The past was gone. Mike was rotting in a jail cell. Lena was broke, alone, and desperate. And me? I was free. I stepped on the gas, feeling the city fade behind me. For the first time in years, I had nothing tying me down. No betrayals. No lies. Just a future waiting to be written. And as I drove down the open highway, wind in my hair, the last thought I had was, "Damn, revenge tastes good."